Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a feeling that I think a lot of people, especially guys, have been wrestling with lately. It's this massive sense of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You know that feeling when the map you were given in school or maybe by your parents, it completely does not match the terrain you're actually walking on.
Right. It's like you're following the GPS and it tells you, turn left onto Success Boulevard, but you look out the window and you're driving straight off a cliff.
Exactly. You're told the rules of modern society are one thing, be open, be soft, be egalitarian, always ask for permission.
But then reality hits.
Yeah. When you actually apply those rules in dating or out in the corporate world, the results are basically the exact opposite of what you were promised. I mean, you don't get the girl, and you definitely don't get the promotion.
It's that hot and cold paradox. Society demands you be this perfectly safe guy, but biology seems to demand that you be dangerous.
Yeah.
And trying to be both at the exact same time is just, it's driving men insane.
It really is. And that contradiction is exactly where we're parking the car today. We are diving into a stack of material that claims to explain not just why that contradiction exists, but that it was actually engineered. We're looking at what the author calls the hidden mechanics of gender and power.
But before we open this map, we really need to be clear about where this is coming from, because this is not your standard, airport self-help fluff.
No, not at all. We are analyzing a new ebook today titled What Women Want: Beauty and the Beast, Fried Ice and Authority Without Responsibility by Conrad Reicher. And look, full disclosure right up front. This source material is written explicitly for the manosphere.
Very explicitly.
Right, it's for the red pill community, for men's rights activists. It is a polemic. It's aggressive.
And our job here on the Deep Dive is just to be your guides through the text. We aren't here to moralize or tell you what to think. We're here to impartially report on the arguments, the logic, the data presented in the book. We're going to unpack it so you can understand this perspective because, like it or not, it's influencing a massive and growing number of men online who just feel totally left behind by the mainstream narrative.
It's a glimpse into a very specific, ultra-long, incisive lens on the world. And honestly, if the concepts we break down today intrigue you at all, or if you just want to see the primary source code for this worldview for yourself, you need to go check out Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy the ebook.
Yeah, you really have to read it to get the full weight of it.
It's dense. We can only cover the absolute highlights here. And hey, if you're enjoying these deep dives where we tackle the tough, controversial stuff that other shows just won't touch, do us a favor and smash that like and subscribe button right now.
It really helps us keep the lights on.
It does. Okay, let's get into the weeds here. Our roadmap for today covers a few massive pillars from the book. We're going to look at the history of our institutions, this concept of fried ice, and some pretty wild biological data on desire. Right.
You actually mentioned fried ice earlier. It sounds like, a bad state fair food. What is the author actually getting at with that?
So it's his core metaphor for a logical absurdity. Riker argues that modern society has conditioned women to demand a man who is essentially a thermodynamic impossibility. They want fried ice.
Meaning they want two things that literally cannot physically coexist in the same space.
Precisely. He argues that women inherently desire the beast. A man who is dangerous, high testosterone, dominant, heavily capable of violence. That's the fried part. That's the heat.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, society and modern women demand that he be ice. So, safe, domesticated, emotionally available, and perfectly compliant the second he walks through the front door.
So they basically want the conqueror to act like a captive.
Exactly. And Riker says this is impossible. You cannot have a man who is an absolute killer in the boardroom or on the battlefield who is also perfectly docile at home. If you melt the ice to fry it, it's just water. If you freeze the oil, it doesn't fry.
That makes sense. He argues that this impossible demand creates what he calls a gynocentric order. Basically, a society centered entirely on female needs, where women demand the authority of a captain without any of the consequences of the role.
Right. And that's the authority without responsibility part of the title.
Yeah.
I actually found that section fascinating because he uses this ship captain analogy to explain why modern relationships feel so incredibly lopsided to a lot of guys.
He does. In a traditional structure, or a maritime structure, the captain has absolute authority, but he also has absolute responsibility. If the ship hits an iceberg, the captain goes down with the ship.
He doesn't get to just blame the crew and hop on a lifeboat.
Right. He bears the entire weight of the outcome.
And Riker claims that dynamic is just gone now.
He contends that modern feminism has successfully lobbied for a system where women have total authority over family law, cultural mores, inside HR departments, but they are completely insulated from the consequences of their decisions.
Insulated how, exactly?
By the state. If a woman makes a terrible choice in a partner, the state provides a safety net. If she creates a hostile work environment for a guy, HR protects her. Riker argues this breaks the fundamental feedback loop of reality itself.
Because there's no risk.
Exactly. When you have authority without responsibility, you become a tyrant. And that, according to the book, is the current state of gender relations.
Which leads right into what he calls the nice guy trap.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys, even if they aren't deep in this red pill manosphere space, they feel this. They do everything right. They listen. They're vulnerable. They ask for consent before they even hold hands.
And then they get friend zoned or ghosted.
Right. And Riker calls this the syllogism of failure, which is a really strong term.
Well, he's essentially calling it a lie, a massive marketing campaign. He argues that society tells men, be sensitive, be a male ally, wash the dishes, ask for permission to speak. And men follow these instructions thinking it's the cheat code to female desire.
Because that's what they're told.
Right. But the book argues that virtue without power is just a flavor of weakness. He says that while women might say they want a nice guy in a sociology class or a corporate HR meeting, their biology is screaming for something else entirely.
And this brings us to the data. Because Riker isn't just theorizing here. He relies heavily on this economic concept of revealed preferences.
Yeah, this is a classic economic metric. It's the difference between what people say they want on a public survey and what they actually spend their hard-earned money on.
Yeah.
In economics, you don't listen to the words, you watch the wallet.
Right.
And Riker points to the romance novel industry as the ultimate unfiltered data set for female desire.
And he specifically mentions the Kindle Unlimited charts, right? Because that's where the sheer volume of reading is happening.
Correct. And he makes a pretty funny observation here. He says if women actually wanted the safe, egalitarian, nice guy that they publicly claim to want, the bestseller list would be full of stories about, and I quote, accountants discussing consent forms over quinoa salads.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say that is not what's flying off the digital shelves.
Not even close. The market is entirely dominated by specific keywords: dark romance, billionaires, werewolves, vampires, pirates.
The beast again.
The beast in all his forms. Riker argues that 50 Shades of Grey selling 150 million copies wasn't some weird fluke. He calls it a mass confession of the female egg. The fantasy depicted in those books isn't about a man asking for permission or respecting boundaries. It's about a man whose power, financial and physical, is so absolute that he simply creates his own reality.
Wow.
The book argues that women are biologically hardwired to desire a monster that they and only they contain.
That distinction seems really crucial. She doesn't want him to be a monster to her necessarily, but he has to be fully capable of being a monster to the world.
Exactly. It's the Beauty and the Beast archetype. She wants the beast who can kill the wolves in the forest, but who will also eat out of her hand. But, and this is Riker's key point, he has to be a beast first. If he starts out as a puppy, he's invisible to her.
To prove this, the book cites this specific experiment that I thought was just wild. The Tinder surgeon versus barista study. Walk us through that, because the results were pretty stark.
So a researcher took a photo of the exact same attractive male model. In one profile, he's described as a devoted nurse. The bio paints him as kind, agreeable, the type of guy who brings you soup when you're sick.
The absolute perfect nice guy.
Right. In the second profile, they use the exact same photo, but now he's a renegade surgeon. The bio describes him as rude, arrogant, super high competence, saves lives, but basically doesn't have time for your nonsense. He's essentially described as a jerk.
Let me guess. The nice nurse finished last.
It was a complete blowout. The renegade surgeon got 300% more matches. Riker uses this to argue that competence and dominance, even when they're coupled with rudeness or so-called toxic traits, they signal genetic fitness in a way that agreeableness just doesn't. He argues that nice is often interpreted by the female subconscious as low status.
He takes this argument to its absolute extreme with the concept of hybristophilia. This is the real dark side of that attraction mechanism.
It is. Hybristophilia is the sexual attraction to people who commit atrocities. Riker brings up the very discomforting fact that serial killers like Ted Bundy and the Menendez brothers received bags of love letters, nude photos, and marriage proposals while sitting on death row.
Which is logically terrifying. You'd think the moral arbiters of society would be the most repulsed by those guys.
That's Riker's gotcha point. He argues that if women were truly the moral guardians that Victorian society or modern feminism claims they are, they would physically recoil from these men. Instead, the danger signals extreme genetic competence. It proves, in his view at least, that the tingle of attraction is completely separate from and often entirely opposed to civilized morality.
So we have this biological reality, the desire for the beast. But then we have the societal reality, which Riker claims is actively trying to crush that beast. This is where the book pivots heavily from psychology to history. And he uses some very loaded language here.
He does. This is his section on institutional capture. Riker starts with the premise that Western civilization, the infrastructure, the power grid, the internet, the buildings, was built almost exclusively by men. Specifically, men channeling that exact beast energy into creation and production.
But now, he argues, those exact same men are being demonized by the institutions they built. He uses the term Menkampf, which is obviously a highly provocative play on words.
Very provocative. He introduces Menkampf to describe what he sees as the true ethos of modern feminism. He argues it's not a movement for equality anymore, but a literal manifesto of misandry. He claims the ideology blames the male sex for every historical evil, while simultaneously extracting all the resources and comfort that men produce.
And he traces the root of this ideological shift back to the universities.
Yes, this connects to his theory on the Frankfurt School and cultural Marxism.
Let's pause there for a second. Cultural Marxism is a buzzword we hear thrown around a lot. How is Riker defining it in this book?
He defines it as the long march through the institutions. The theory is that Marxist thinkers in the 20th century realized the working class wasn't actually going to revolt economically, because capitalism is making them too comfortable. So they shifted their focus entirely from economics to culture. Instead of rich versus poor, it became oppressor versus oppressed based on identity, race, gender, sexuality.
So the goal shifted from economic revolution to cultural reengineering.
Exactly. Riker argues that universities simply stopped teaching logic, rhetoric, and hard skills and started focusing on instilling guilt. The goal became to deconstruct the patriarchy. He argues this replaced meritocracy, where the best man wins, with mediocrity through mechanisms like DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion.
He has a really fascinating take on the state itself in this section. He calls the government the surrogate husband.
That ties right back to the authority without responsibility thesis. Riker argues that the welfare state has effectively replaced the biological father and the husband.
How so? Is it just a financial thing?
Mostly, yes. He says taxpayers, who he asserts are net mostly men, fund a system that allows women to marry the state. If a woman can get resources, protection, and provision from the government, she doesn't need to compromise with a man. She doesn't need a husband for survival.
So she can use the state for stability, which frees her up to chase the beast for excitement.
That's his argument. She gets the beta provision from the government, what he calls the bureaucratic beta provider, and the alpha excitement from the bad boys, leaving the average nice guy with absolutely nothing.
And the enforcers of this system, according to the book, are corporate HR departments.
Right. Riker describes HR not as a place to manage personnel, but as the handmaidens of feminism. He argues their primary job isn't to generate profit at all. It's to police feeling and eliminate the high testosterone risk-taking behavior that actually drives innovation. He views the modern corporate office as a completely hostile environment for the masculine spirit.
It's a pretty bleak picture he paints. The institutions are captured, biology is being ignored, and men are being told to be something that makes them repulsive to the very people they want to attract. So surely he doesn't just leave it there. What is the solution? What does Conrad Riker say a man should actually do?
He pivots to what he calls the red pill strategy, and the first step is purely internal. Stop apologizing. He talks a lot about deconstructing shit tests.
I feel like every guy knows what this feels like, even if they don't have a specific name for it. It's that moment where a woman seems to be picking a fight or criticizing you for absolutely no logical reason.
Riker reframes the shit test completely. He says men usually interpret it as malice or nagging, but he argues it's actually a biological audit.
An audit, like the IRS.
Sort of. He claims a woman creates chaos subconsciously to check if your frame is solid. She's poking the bear to see if it's a real bear, or just a guy in a bear suit. If you crumble, if you apologize or get emotional, you fail the audit. You prove you aren't the captain.
So how do you pass the audit? If you can't fight back and you can't apologize, what's left?
You don't use logic. Logic is for the boardroom. Riker suggests the agree and amplify tactic.
Give us the example from the book. I thought this was actually pretty clever.
So let's say she calls you a jerk or says you're being difficult. The nice guy would apologize and logically explain why he didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Riker says you should lean into it. Respond with something like, yes, I'm actually working on my villain origin story right now. Do you want to be the sidekick or the hostage?
I see. It totally flips the script. It's playful, but it holds ground.
It refuses to accept her frame. It shows you're unbothered and dominant. But he also says there's a much harder edge to this. If the disrespect is real, not just a test, but actual disrespect, the only punishment that works is the total withdrawal of attention.
Right. Don't argue, don't shout, just disappear.
Exactly. Attention is the currency women value most, according to Riker. Stop spending it on bad behavior.
Now, beyond dating, Riker has a broader, much more radical plan for men. He talks about the Schwartz Commando.
Yeah, this is where he gets into real community building. The Schwartz Commando is his term for small, highly disciplined black squads of androcentric allies.
Androcentric meaning centered entirely on men.
Right. He argues that you cannot survive this modern environment alone. The lone wolf dies. You need a brotherhood, similar to the early Christian communities or ancient guilds, where trust and competence are the only metrics that matter. He says men need to build their own networks that are completely invisible to the gynocentric state.
And these groups are supposed to build what he calls the new manosphere Jerusalem.
Which is a metaphor for parallel institutions. Riker advises men to essentially opt out of the corrupt mainstream system altogether.
So don't try to change HR. Don't try to vote your way out of it.
Believe. He advocates using Bitcoin to escape the financial dragnet because it's censorship resistant. He suggests the gig economy and new media to completely bypass the gatekeepers. He talks about becoming the crypto expat, someone who is geographically or economically independent of the system.
It's about becoming the out-of-control man.
Yes, but out of control in the specific sense that the state and the HR department can't control you. But internally, you must be the controlled beast. That's the final archetype he aims for.
The Aristotelian ruler.
Correct. You aren't a chaotic mess. You are highly capable of violence and chaos, but you are disciplined by a strict code of honor. That, Riker argues, is the only thing that commands respect from other men and genuine, burning desire from women.
It is a lot to digest. We're talking evolutionary psychology, economic data, history, conspiracy theory, and a fair bit of polemic fire.
It is. It's a very specific worldview that tries to synthesize all these different fields into a unified theory of why the modern world feels so incredibly hostile to men right now.
And again, we want to remind you, our listener, that we are analyzing this text as requested. We are presenting Conrad Riker's logic so you can understand this perspective, which is clearly gaining major traction. We aren't endorsing the political implications, but we are acknowledging that for many men, this book feels like a roadmap out of sheer confusion.
It articulates a frustration that is very real for a lot of people. It validates the feeling that the rules have changed and that the new rules simply don't make sense.
Exactly. If you want the full operational manual, and we really only scratched the surface here, there are whole chapters on divorce law and parenting we didn't even touch.
Yeah.
You need to get the book. It's called What Women Want: Beauty and the Beast, Fried Ice, and Authority Without Responsibility. You can buy it right now on Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books.
Riker frames it as an investment in your own mental sovereignty.
And if you want the daily updates, because apparently the culture war never sleeps, you should absolutely follow him at Conrad Riker on Substack. He calls them daily intelligence reports.
That's definitely worth checking out if you want to see how these theories are applied to current events in real time.
Absolutely. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, if you like us taking these dense, controversial topics and breaking them down so you don't have to read 300 pages, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep the content coming.
We've got a lot more fascinating topics in the pipeline.
We do. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. It builds on something from the book that really stuck with me. Riker makes a big deal about the market. He says the market never lies. If the romance novel industry is the biggest market for female desire, and it's selling billionaires and monsters, it proves we should watch what people do, not what they say.
Right.
But take that same logic and apply it to yourself. If we audited your search history, your bank statements, your screen time, what is your revealed preference? Are you actually building the beast, or are you just consuming the friction of a world you claim to hate?
That is the real question.
Think about it. We'll see you next time.